Southeast Mortgage, the official home loan lender of the Georgia Bulldogs, presents the official podcast of Dawgs on Demand on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. On today's program, we'll give you the latest news from the world of University of Georgia athletics and more. And now, from the broadcast studios of Dawgs on Demand, here's your host, Chris Hall.
All right, Chris Hall here for Dawgs on Demand on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. It's our great pleasure to have Bryce Koon with us. Bryce, of course, works with 247sports.com, the Crowded Booth podcast as well. He does a lot of stuff. He does a great job in everything that he does, and it's always great to have Bryce on our program to talk a little bit about football, and we got some stuff to talk about today. Early signing period, of course, coming up, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then, a week from Saturday, finally, it'll get here when Georgia will be taking on Ohio State, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Bryce, good to see you. Good to have you on our program today. How are things going with the Koon household these days?
Going well, getting ready for Christmas. You and I were just talking about that before we started the show, and it's almost here. And like you said, with Christmas time, you get ready for playoffs and you get ready for the national championship, which a lot of Dog fans are going to be hoping that they see their team with Los Angeles this year.
Yeah,
Los Angeles this year. So it'll be exciting.
Yeah, and it did. SoFi Stadium is the ultimate destination for where the Georgia Bulldogs want to go. Now, tomorrow's the early national signing day. And right now, 247 Sports has Georgia with the number 2 ranked team, the signing the class for this go around. With Alabama, typically you have Alabama number 1. Then you have, the other guys nipping at their heels. You have Georgia, and then you have Notre Dame also in there, and some other guys as well. As we approach National Signing Day, just from the national perspective, and maybe honing in a little bit with the Georgia class, you would expect Georgia to add to their class. Do they have a shot at maybe catching Alabama with the number 1 ranked signing class for this cycle?
Yeah, I was reading some stuff on this kind of in prep that the 24/7 national page had. And I think one of the biggest things when you look at this class is I think Alabama has more 5-star talent. So it's how is it weighted? They've got more 5 stars, but Georgia has a chance with a couple of guys, early Wednesday morning, kind of late Wednesday afternoon. If they could win some of those battles and Alabama maybe lose on 1 or 2, the number is going to be really close. That little power ranking index is going to be really, really close for Georgia to maybe take them over. But look, it's those 2 teams. It's those 2 programs right now leading the way. You mentioned Notre Dame's in the mix. Marcus Freeman has a pretty good class in his first full year recruiting. LSU is up there as well with an impressive class. Brian Kelly being able to pitch, hey, we went to an SEC championship with a roster that was decimated this time last year. So he's being able to pitch some things. So I think you're seeing some teams, I don't want to say start closing the gap, but they're still the number 1, number 2 favorites, Alabama and Georgia. And tomorrow and Wednesday will be an exciting day to kind of see how that folds out.
Yeah. And I think, if you're in the top 4, top 5, you've done good, and who knows how the classes are going to play out. That's just the projection and that kind of thing. So I think if you land in the top 5, hey, you've done a great job. And, what is the difference between number 1 and number 3 or whatever? There's not a whole lot to that. And, of course, the portal. Here we go with the portal again. There's a lot of movement in the portal, the transfer portal, a lot of guys going into the transfer portal. And the scuttlebutt is that Georgia may have a couple of surprises coming in through the transfer portal, especially a wide receiver. And also Travis Hunter is sitting out there, and they're courting him pretty heavily. So you might see some dips and some flips and some guys coming in through the portal. It's going to be kind of an exciting day, for Georgia fans, but also fans of all of these colleges. And of course, we get up early and we stay with the timeline. Who's going to sign and who's going to send in their letter Any idea of maybe a major surprise amongst some of the teams that maybe people are not anticipating at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned one out of the portal, and I don't know if he's going to sign necessarily, on tomorrow, but Travis Hunter's one of those. I mean, does he follow Deion to Colorado? Georgia's heavily involved with him as well. What does that look like? I think one that I'm excited to kind of keep an eye on, it doesn't pertain to Georgia, but it does pertain to some of their counterparts, is Desmond Ricks, relative of Eli Ricks, who played at Alabama this past year. This is a guy who is being really heavily courted by LSU. Alabama has been in the mix. Auburn has, with Hugh Freeze trying to get back into the mix for a 5-star defensive back. And so that's one that's going to be interesting to watch. There's going to be battles. There's always a surprise. I mean, what was it last year? Travis Hunter going to Jackson State over Florida State. I mean, there's going to be something that we don't see coming that's going to kind of pop up, and it's going to be the talking point for the next 2 days. How does this affect their class? Strictly signing day, I don't want to say that it has been watered down due to the portal. I mean, to me and to you and to many fans, it's still a national holiday of some sense, to be able to tune in and be able to do some different things and kind of watch that timeline fold out you talked about. But, I think that there's going to be some portal announcements tomorrow that are going to be high impact guys. I think there's going to be, you're going to see a team or two that maybe is, per 24/7 sports rankings in the 30s. Maybe they make a big get. Maybe they win a battle that is able to put them to the forefront and help. If it's a team that came off a rebuilding year we talk about this, next September, next October, there's a reason why they're maybe in line to go to their conference title or to challenge for a playoff spot. TCU was one of those teams. They had a good kind of class that was brought in by Sonny Dykes, and now we're sitting here talking about them being in the playoffs. So, it's cool to look back on those storylines from early signing day into the February day as well, to kind of point and, see how to connect the dots going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch all of this. And, you got the top tier guys, who have been there, and they just keep stacking it up. I mean, Georgia's an example of that. You just keep adding these top 1 or 2 or 3, ranked classes, and you just keep stacking it up, and you can't just keep reloading. And that's the key to success, to stay for a sustained period of time in the upper echelon of college football. Well, of course, we're looking very much forward to the college football playoffs. The 4 teams are involved, obviously Michigan versus TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. And then you have Georgia taking on Ohio State in the Peach Bowl. It seems like forever since Georgia played that game against LSU. And I mean, it just seems like, such a long stretch now. And I was talking to Gary Stokan, who is the CEO and president of the Peach Bowl, about expanding the playoffs to 12 teams. And I think one of the advantages of that is that you're still going to have conference championship games, simply because of the money aspect. They generate a lot of money. But then, you don't have that. You don't have that long layoff of college football. It seems like, you have Army Navy after the championship games, and what a great game that is. But you don't have that long layoff of these high profile games. And that'll be something I think that is positive about expanding to 12 teams. I like the 4-team format. What do you think? Just your personal opinion as we look forward to 2024 and expanding to 12 teams. Good thing? Too many teams? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this has been an ongoing conversation. I think you and I've had this conversation before, kind of when the first conversations first started about this. But I think that my biggest thing was, would it water down the regular season? Yeah. That was the biggest concern. Some of the concern is, okay, the LSU-Alabama game, there was an unreal football game this past year. I mean, will it mean as much? And look, we're all going to still watch college football. No matter if they did a 64-team bracket like they do March Madness, we're going to watch it. I'm going to tune in. I would say this, though, with the 12 teams, you're going to see some big profile games concerned with maybe winning a bye, getting a bye to go into the playoff. You're going to see it as one of those fringe teams, maybe a 13th, 14th ranked team. I think of teams like Ole Miss that constantly sits in that top 15 ranked kind of area. Are they going to be a team that makes a move up? LSU this year, like the SEC title game would have been huge for LSU, because if LSU would have won that football game, they were going to be in the playoff. And maybe not, would they have gotten the recognition? You're going to see a lot more competition towards the end of the year, which I think, one, for the TV revenue, they're going to love it. They're going to absolutely love that. Yeah. So it's really kind of pick your poison. I mean, there's people who love the 14 playoff. I know a good friend of mine, he loves the BCS format. He said, just take the top two. Like he said, I would have just rather seen Michigan and Georgia play for the national title. Like I don't really need to see Ohio State. There's a lot of people who didn't want Ohio State to get in to begin with, kind of that fourth spot, a lot of controversy. So all of that to say is we're still going to watch it, for the health of the sport. I don't think it's going to diminish it. I mean, I'm not one of those doomsday people that say it's going to, destroy the sport. Because look, we're all still going to watch it. We're going to buy tickets. We're going to buy the merchandise. So it is college football. It's just going to continue to change as much, really and truly, Chris. It's changed over the past 20 years. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are people right here, maybe not on Zoom. I don't think it was invented yet, but people talking, at the diner about how, man, this BCS format or this, what are we going to do with this and stuff like that. That they thought it would be doomsday for college football. And look where it is now. It's stronger, probably the most prominent sport here in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, college football has survived the portal. It survived NIL so far, all the NIL deals. And this is going to be another thing. The college football, it will evolve into what it is, and it's kind of, when the basketball playoffs come around, college the basketball tournament, you got all of the dig about the bubble teams and first team in and first team out, and you're going to have the same thing with college football. I just love it. I personally love it. Let's get it on and let's play. And the lower divisions. Below the FCS division, they have the playoffs and they play those, 16 games or whatever it is. And, the major, that major classification can do the same as well. Now we're pointing toward the Peach Bowl game, especially. That is most interest of, obviously, to Georgia fans. And so you got Georgia, number one, ranked Georgia in the college football playoffs against Ohio State, ranked number 4. I think, this was the game that a lot of people may have thought would be the championship game, and there was a lot of speculation about that when the season began. I come from the Larry Munson school of every team that Georgia plays is the best team they've ever played in their whole, life. I'm a doomsday kind of guy. I sit on the couch and say, oh no, we're not going to handle this team, but for some reason, when I think about Georgia and Ohio State, as I do, my due diligence and studying and that kind of thing, I feel kind of good about this matchup. I think Georgia matches up very well with Ohio State. I think it's going to be a good game. It'll come down, to the fourth quarter and who can do what they need to do in the fourth quarter. But I think Georgia matches up pretty well with Ohio State, and Georgia's a 6.5 point favorite. I'm just looking. I think Georgia's going to win this game. What do you think?
I think that there's a reason that Georgia's number one in the country, and for yourself, fans like my dad who grew up really in the Larry Munson era, who have that doomsday approach. I mean, look, Ohio State's a talented team. If Ohio State shows up in the way that they can, it's going to be, they've got a legitimate shot to win the football game because they do have a lot of talent. Now, the problem is, Chris, is that we've seen that talent disappear, go on and off a lot this year, most notably against Michigan in the last regular season game of the year. So, I think when you look at the roster, C.J. Stroud and all these different things, okay, offensively, they got a lot of weapons. A couple of things that kind of stand out to me. Georgia's secondary. LSU found something with young Nussmeier that played quarterback there, came in. They found something, and Kirby Smart was able to kind of correct it. Luckily, Georgia had a big enough lead where they never really were truly in danger, but LSU did make some things interesting. I think there was a pivotal moment in the third quarter where you were like, if they score here, they could make it like a 2-possession game, and it could really get interesting. But Ohio State watched that tape. Like, that they looked at that. How can we exploit that? I think, but it's also fair to look at how's Georgia fared against elite receivers. Was talking with a good friend of mine who covers Georgia, and he was saying, okay, you go back to the Tennessee game, did a fantastic job of that. You look at LSU, who has some really good receivers. This is probably the third game where you face, some really, I'll say NFL type receivers that Ohio State has. So how does Keely Ringo match up against this? How do guys like Kamari Lassiter, how does a guy like Malachi Starks, who has had his moments, but he's also had some freshman moments, what do you see in, him in this kind of primetime matchup? There's obviously reason to be excited about it. And I think that is a good reason. And then kind of the second point I turned out is, which receiver steps up in this game for Georgia? Ohio State is number 2 in the country, if I'm not mistaken, against running backs and tight ends. Right. And we all know the adage against Georgia is that Kenny McIntosh is going to catch something out of the backfield. The emergence of some other guys in the backfield, especially a guy like Kendall Milton, who came on strong the past couple of weeks for Georgia. And then Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington. I'm sure we may see Oscar Delp somewhere in there as well. But, I think that the health of A.D. Mitchell is going to be huge because he has been a polarizing player in his short time in Athens for me. The spring game his freshman year, we were all talking about 3-star A.D. Mitchell. Where did he come from? He wasn't as highly recruited. He and Ladd McConkey. McConkey's a fantastic player, but I think that, Mitchell's an X factor for Georgia. Can he take the top off of the defense? Can he be one of those guys? And then, the health of Arian Smith. Is he healthy? I mean, when he's one of the fastest players in college football. So, I think that Georgia has a lot of things positive going for this game. And to me, the biggest key is the fact that you have Kirby Smart and Stetson Bennett. Yeah. At this point, with those two guys, you have to feel really confident heading into any football game. Yeah. And just the swagger that they have, the moxie, the confidence. I don't think it's a bad thing to say that Stetson Bennett is a really good rhythm quarterback because he is. And any quarterback really is. But if Stetson gets into a rhythm early on and this offense starts clicking, I think the pressure's all on Ohio State. I think it is because, Georgia's sitting pretty right now. I'll play a little doomsday for you, Chris. Even if Georgia loses this game, and there will be fans that say, man, we should have won it. But if you take a step back, you won it last year. So it's not like you're saying the narrative's gone that Kirby can't win the big game, that Stetson Bennett can't win the big game if you lose it. The pressure's really on Ryan Day and Ohio State. No one really thinks they should have been in the playoff. They've already gotten blasted once on live national television against another playoff team. So I think the pressure sides mostly with Ohio State. And I do agree with you. That was a long-winded way of saying it, but I think that Georgia is the favorite for a reason. And I think they can walk out of Mercedes-Benz for the third time this year and hopefully win number 3 for them.
Yeah, it's amazing. Georgia playing their third game in Mercedes-Benz in this season. And, from this Georgia team, what I have noticed about this, what makes this Georgia team, I think, an exceptional team is they can do whatever they need to do to win. If you're in a shootout, Georgia can shoot out with you. If you need to lock it down, with a running game and control offense and, stifling defense, they can do that as well. I think Georgia has proved that whatever needs to be done in a game, if they need to run and gun with you or if they need to, play stout defense and run the ball and control the ball, they can do it. And so I think that's one of the big advantages for Georgia. And Stetson Bennett is older than 50% of starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, he's a very experienced guy, obviously. And so I'm looking forward to that game as well. Now, the other game in the Fiesta Bowl is Michigan and TCU. Now, what an interesting matchup. I've been trying to crunch some numbers on that one, kind of look at that game, try to evaluate that game. Michigan, obviously an impressive team, had a great season. That big win over Ohio State. They were getting hit a little bit with a soft schedule, but, they came out against Ohio State and took care of Ohio State. TCU coming out of nowhere. I think they were, projected to be the 5th team in the Big 12, and they come out and do what they have done. TCU has done. What an interesting game! And as I study this game, I kind of rely on my heart as my head kind of studies this stuff. I think TCU's got a shot in this game against Michigan. This is going to be an intriguing game, isn't it?
No, I think it is. I remind myself going back to conference championship weekend, and I was sitting on the couch watching, Duggan lead his team, down that crazy drive to win to tie the game, to go to overtime, and TCU obviously ended up losing the Big 12 championship. But anytime you have a competitor like that at quarterback, and Georgia fans can attest to this, last year, a guy that isn't the most highly valued, has a chip on his shoulder, which I think Max Duggan does. You really have to kind of like that your chances. TCU I think they're playing with house money. It's kind of just no one expected them to be here. They're just kind of rolling and seeing what can happen. They're going up against a Michigan team that, ultimately, Chris, I think it's going to be Georgia and Michigan in the national title. I think Ohio State and TCU both have cases to win their respective games. But Michigan, this is a little bit of a vengeance tour for them. They've got a different quarterback in place now, J.J. McCarthy, the full-time starter, who brings a little bit more down the field presence. I think even after losing the two pass rushers they had last year, the defense has been very, very good. So I think all of this to say is, I think TCU is going to have to try to take some shots early and try to steal the momentum away. Because, look, Michigan is a talented football team, and Michigan is built, and I'll say this, and I'm sure you guys, if Georgia advances, we'll do a preview of the national title. And so remember this, bookmark it, Chris, so you can say this, because this will be wise words. Michigan is built a lot like Georgia.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the talent level that Georgia has, but from the physical makeup, the roster makeup, Jim Harbaugh, not that he copied what Kirby Smart did, but I think he looked down and saw what other teams were doing. And so we have to be physical. And I think we're starting to see that offense be a little bit more explosive. But, Blake Corum being out, that's going to be huge for them. The running back for Michigan, that a lot of people thought could be a Heisman finalist. It's going to be a fun game, man. I say all these different things to say that, the playoff is so much fun. Bowl games I love bowl games. Like I'm one of those people that sat down and watched UAB against Miami of Ohio in the Bahamas Bowl last week. It's a lot of fun, the competitive nature, and obviously the playoff is going to be really nice as well.
Yeah, it will be a lot of fun. So it's coming up, and we'd like to say Merry Christmas to everyone. Merry Christmas to you and your family. And we want to say Merry Christmas to everyone who joins us here. And, we'll have a wonderful Christmas day, and then we'll watch some NFL over the weekend. We'll watch some NFL and some bowl games. Obviously they'll be piling up here as we get closer to New Year's Eve. It's kind of interesting that these playoff games are on New Year's Eve. I was talking to Mr. Stoken, Gary Stoken from the Peach Bowl. I said, look, the Peach Bowl game is going to start at 8:00. It could very well be that you'll still be playing football when the new year hits. And I said, I have an idea for you. Since it's the Chick-fil-A, Peach Bowl, let's take a cow and put a cow up in the top of Mercedes-Benz and let the cow slowly come down as we get close to midnight. They have they have the peach drop in Atlanta, but that's old news. Let's do the cow drop. What do you think about that? He said he liked the idea, but he didn't know logistically, if it could happen. And what do you think about that?
Well, tell me he's got one more year to work on it. We're going to need it for next year, going into 2024. Now, I like that. I remember last year, I think Georgia and Michigan played, obviously, in the Orange Bowl, and it was the nightcap on New Year's Eve, because I remember watching the game, and then like 30 minutes later is, I'm watching Dick Clark's, New Year's Eve celebration. So, it's one of those things that it's a fun time of the year, and it's a lot of fun because, look, it's going to be a cold January, February, March, and then the dog days of summer till we get back at it.
There you go. We'll have to fill it in with the Braves. How did we let Swanson go? Did we like that move? Did we like that move? Was he worth all of that money? I hate to see my Freeman go and now my Swanson go, and I don't know. Yeah, we love the Braves, so we'll cap it off with that. What do you think about Swanson move?
We do. I'll say this. I love Dansby Swanson. Yeah. I think that as a player, a leader, the way he stepped up as the leader in the locker room, and that's not, we have no insight. It's just, that's what everyone was saying. The players were saying the way he stepped up with, Freeman being gone. But this is where I rest easy. We won a World Series with him. He delivered on what he wanted to do in his hometown. His wife plays for the professional soccer team in Chicago. He recently just got married. And Chris, unlike how it felt with Freeman, this felt like his decision. And I'm going to tell you this. If a team offered me around $9-10 million more dollars, and I get to go live now go live in a place where my wife calls home and plays her professional sport, I can't say I would say no. So I love Dansby Swanson, no ill feelings. And it probably also helps that the Cubs are not contending for a World Series anytime soon. So when Chicago comes, it'll be kind of fun to welcome him back and when we go up to Wrigley. So I'm okay with it. There's a lot of talent that Atlanta has. And two, from what I've heard, they were going to have to pick between Swanson and Max Fried. If we get to keep Fried, and keep him a Brave forever, I'm okay with that.
You can never have too much pitching, indeed. And, to be honest with you, the only guys I know of who are worth $25 million a year in salary are you and me. I mean, so there you go.
Well, I'm ready for Alex Anthopoulos to give us a call.
Hey, I'm waiting. All right, Bryce Koon's been with us. Bryce, it's always great to talk with you. I love talking football with you, baseball, and all the good stuff. And thank you for being with us. Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks so much, and appreciate it as always. Y'all have a good Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Dawgs on Demand would like to thank Southeast Mortgage, the official home loan lender of the Georgia Bulldogs, for sponsoring our program today. When the time comes to finance or refinance your home, make the smart choice and get your home loan from Southeast Mortgage. Your friends at Southeast Mortgage are ready to help you. Visit southeastmortgage.com/UGA today for more information. Be sure to visit Dawgs on Demand on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and our great interactive website, dogsondemand.com. Join us for our next program as we keep you up to date with the latest sports news from the University of Georgia and more. Until then, be safe and go Dogs.